All right, welcome back to week 12 of Computers in the Studio. This is the final video within this lesson. In the previous video, we discussed just some of the basics of the animator functionality within the text layer of After Effects, and now we're going to look very quickly at the advanced options that this animator provides, right? So if you take your example, or you take the example we were doing previously, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the masks that this text has, and I'm just going to quickly delete it so that we can actively see the text that we're using. Okay? And then the next thing we're going to do is after this, I'm going to ask that you then change the text to some dots. And so this will better allow us to track how the animation is affecting the text. And so when I click into my range selector, you'll see that then there's an advanced option within there. I'm going to want you to click on that. Then the next thing you'll see is a drop down of options. And so the first one that says units percentage has another option called index. And so the difference between these is that percentages are from 0 to 100 and always will be from 0 to 100. But an index specifically is based on the amount of characters that you have within your animation. So if I then go to where this animation is, you see the index is 7, and that's because you have 7 characters here. While an index might be more specific, the drawback of this is, for example, if I then now add more characters, so I'm going to add maybe one more period, you'll see that now it's not affected because the index is set to 7. So generally, it's a good rule of thumb to maybe just keep it at percentages, because it will always affect all of the characters no matter whether you add more or subtract from your text element. So set it back to percentages and then set the end keyframe back to 100% so that it's affecting all your characters. If we go down through it more so, you'll see that there's a mode, and this just affects the way that the animation works. So if I change the mode from add to now subtract and start playback from the beginning, I'm going to shorten this very quickly so that we can loop through it much easier. You'll see that the animation starts and then goes back to its initial point. Okay? And then moving forward with all of the other options we have an amount. And so an amount is how much the animation will affect the text layer. So for example, if I set this to 50, you'll see that it doesn't go down all the way, and the color is only like a slight pink. Really quickly going to change this back to add. And so how much is this affecting it? So if I set it to 25, you'll see that it's barely affecting the text at all. I'll change it back to 100 just so that you can see it affecting the text all the way. Okay, those are pretty basic as shown. They also have keyframe options available to them through the stopwatch. Finally, we have shape. And so shape is kind of a little difficult to explain, but it characterizes how this animation will affect the text element. So a square, for example, means that it will, for example, affect all of these equally. So as you see, each one is being affected. However, if I then now change this to ramp up, you'll see that the animation is now going in the opposite direction, and it kind of takes the shape of a ramp. I can also do ramp down. I can also do triangle, so it kind of eases in and then back out. Round, which then creates kind of a semicircle shape, and then smooth, which creates maybe like a V. Okay? These are really, really cool to play with, to mess with. Definitely use them in your homework. We also have ease high and ease low. And what these options do is, I'm going to set this to when the animation is in the shape. It basically affects how much it affects the shape. So if I do ease high 100, you'll see that more of my text element is being affected by the animation. If I do it negative 100, less of it is being affected. Ease low does the opposite, in that if I set to negative 100, more of it's being affected. If I set to 100, less of it is being affected, right? And then the final option within advanced options, and probably the coolest one, is randomize order. So if I hit on, you'll see that now it's not necessarily going in a straight line or in a linear. The animation is not being affecting in a linear way, in the way that it would if randomized order was not on. But it still isn't random in that every element, or the way that all of the elements are affected, is the same every time, right? So what if we wanted it so that as it goes on through this animation, how it's being affected and when it's being affected is changed? And that's done with random seed. So if I go to maybe 1 second of my animation and change random seed, you'll see that it's changing what's affected. And what's cool about this is that it has this stopwatch. So I can then click on this to start a keyframe, and then maybe change it so that keyframe, the ending keyframe is 10 for the random seed. And then now I get this sort of random dance that happens because the seed is changing constantly. And so what is being affected is changing. Okay? So these are the advanced options within After Effects. Please be sure to check out the exercise after this, and then also the homework. That concludes week 12 of Computers in the Studio. Hope you all are staying healthy. See you next week.